you child, in your own chair at your own table." "I don't always come to dinner," said Una, "but I hate being called child. Please tell me about storerooms and giving out things." "Ah, it's a great responsibility, particularly with that old cat Moore looking at the lists over your shoulder. And such a shocking thing happened last summer. Poor crazy Sissy, my nurse that I was telling you of, she took 3 solid silver tablespoons." "Took? But isn't that stealing?" Una cried. "Shh!" said Philadelphia, looking round at Puck. "All I say is she took them without my leave. I made it right afterwards. So as Dad says, and he's a magistrate, it wasn't a legal offence. It was only compounding a felony." "It sounds awful," said Una. "It was. My dear, I was furious. I had had the keys for 10 months, and I'd never lost anything before. I said nothing at first, because a big house offers so many chances of things being mislaid and coming to hand later. Fetching up in the lee scuppers, my uncle calls it. But next week I spoke to old Sissy about it when she was doing my hair at night, and she said I wasn't to worry my heart for trifles." "Isn't it like 'em?" Una burst out. "They see you're worried over something that really matters, and they say, 'Don't worry,' as if that did any good." "I quite agree with you, my dear, quite agree with you. I told Sis the spoons were solid silver and worth 40 shillings, so if the thief were found, he'd be tried for his life." "Hanged, do you mean?" Una said. "They ought to be, but Dad says no jury will hang a man nowadays for a 40-shilling theft. They transport 'em into penal servitude at the uttermost ends of the earth beyond the seas for the term of their natural life. I told Sissy that, and I saw her tremble in my mirror. Then she cried and caught hold of my knees, and I couldn't for my life understand what it was all about, she cried so. Can you guess, my dear, what that poor crazy thing had done? It was midnight before I pieced it together. She had given the spoons to Jerry Gam, the witch-master on the green, so that he might put a charm on me. Me! Put a charm on you? Why? That's what I asked. And then I saw how mad poor Sissy was. You know this stupid little cough of mine? It will disappear as soon as I go to London. She was troubled about that, and about my being so thin, and she told me Jerry had promised her if she would bring him 3 silver spoons that he'd charm my cough away and make me plump. Flesh up, she said. I couldn't help laughing. But it was a terrible night. I had to put Sissy into my own bed and stroke her hand till she cried herself to sleep. What else could I have done? When she woke and I coughed, I suppose I can cough in my own room if I please, she said that she'd killed me, and asked me to have her hanged at Lewes sooner than send her to the uttermost ends of the earth away from me. How awful! What did you do, Phil? Do? I rode off at 5 in the morning to talk to Master Jerry, with a new lash on my whip. Oh, I was furious. Witch-master or no witch-master, I meant to... what's a witch-master? A master of witches, of course. I don't believe there are witches, but people say every village has a few, and Jerry was the master of all ours at Marklake. He has been a smuggler and a man-of-war's man, and now he pretends to be a carpenter and joiner. He can make almost anything, but he really is a white wizard. He cures people by herbs and charms. He can cure them after Dr. Brake has given them up, and that's why Dr. Brake hates him so. He used to make me toy carts and charm off my warts when I was a child. Philadelphia spread out her hands, with the delicate, shiny little nails. It isn't counted lucky to cross him. He has his ways of getting even with you, they say. But I wasn't afraid of Jerry. I saw him working in his garden, and I leaned out of my saddle and double-thonged him between the shoulders over the hedge. Well, my dear, for the first time since Dad gave him to me, my troubadour, I wish you could see the sweet creature, shied across the road, and I spilled out into the hedge-top. Most undignified. Jerry pulled me through to his side and brushed the leaves off me. I was horribly pricked, but I didn't care. "Now, Jerry," I said, "I'm going to take the hide off you first and send you to Lou's afterwards. You well know why." "Oh," he said, and he sat down among his beehives. "Then I reckon you've come about old Sissy's business, my dear." "I reckon I just about have," I said. "Stand away from these hives. I can't get at you there." "That's why I be where I be," he said. "If you'll excuse me, Miss Phil, I don't hold with bein' flogged before breakfast at my time o' life." He's a huge big man, but he looked so comical squatting among the hives that I know I oughtn't to. I laughed, and he laughed. I always laugh at the wrong time. But I soon recovered my dignity, and I said, "Then give me back what you made poor Sissy steal." "Your poor Sissy," he said. "She's a hatful of trouble. But you shall have 'em, Miss Phil. They're already put by for you." And would you believe it? The old sinner pulled my 3 silver spoons out of his dirty pocket and polished them on his cuff. "Here they be," he says, and he gave them to me, just as cool as though I'd come to have my warts charmed. That's the worst of people having known you when you were young. But I preserved my composure. "Jerry," I said, "what in the world are we to do? If you'd been caught with these things on you, you'd have been hanged." "I know it," he said, "but they're yours now." "But you made my Sissy steal them," I said. "That I didn't," he said. "Your Sissy, she was pickin' at me and terrifying me all the long day and every day for weeks to put a charm on you, Miss Phil, and take away your little spitty cough." "Yes, I knew that, Jerry, and to make me flesh up," I said, "I'm much obliged to you, but I'm not one of your pigs." "Ah, I reckon she've been talking to you then," he said. "Yes, she give me no peace, and being terrified, for I don't hold with old women, I laid a task on her which I thought'd silence her. I never reckoned the old scraddle'd risk her neckbone at Lou's assizes for your sake, Miss Phil. But she did. She up and stole, I tell you, as cheerful as a tinker. You might have knocked me down with any one of them little spoons when she brung 'em in her apron." "Do you mean to say, then, that you did it to try my poor Sissy?" I screamed at him. "What else for, dearie?" he said. "I don't stand in need of hedge stealings. I'm a freeholder with money in the bank. And now I won't trust women no more. Silly old besom, I do believe she'd have stole the squire's big fob watch if I'd required her." "Then you're a wicked, wicked old man," I said, and I was so angry that I couldn't help crying, and of course that made me cough. Jerry was in a fearful taking. He picked me up and carried me into his cottage. It's full of foreign curiosities, and he got me something to eat and drink, and he said he'd be hanged by the neck any day if it pleased me. He said he'd even tell old Sissy he was sorry. That's a great come-down for a witch-master, you know. I was ashamed of myself for being so silly, and I dabbed my eyes and said, "The least you can do now is to give poor Sis some sort of a charm for me." "Yes, that's only fair dealings," he said. "You know the names of the 12 apostles, dearie. You say them names, one by one, before your open window, rain or storm, wet or shine, 5 times a day fasting. But mind you, twixt every name you draw in your breath through your nose, right down to your pretty little toes, as long and as deep as you can, and let it out slow through your pretty little mouth. There's virtue for your cough in those names spoke that way. And I'll give you something you can see, moreover. Here's a stick of maple, which is the warmest tree in the wood." "That's true," Una interrupted. "You can feel it almost as warm as yourself when you touch it." "It's cut 1 inch long for your every year," Jerry said. "That's 16 inches. You set it in your window so that it holds up the sash, and thus you keep it, rain or shine or wet or fine, day and night. I've said words over it which will